Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. Despite the name, I was still so unprepared for how very clear much of the water is in the Crystal River region of Florida. From snaking like a teal ribbon around trees and under bridges, to reflecting clouds like a salty mirror, on the day I went out on it, our boat sped closer on its glassy surface to a horizon already dotted with other anchored boats. Every year, fishing folks make the pilgrimage to this area of Florida to dive for bay scallops. And for those who grow up in the region, scalloping season is a cultural tradition and usually one that begins as soon as a child can swim. Katie Jo Davis, owner of KD Outdoors Fishing Charters, remembers taking naps in the fish box on a boat before she could even walk. She's been fishing and scalloping these waters her whole life, and after 6 years in the U.S. Army, worked as a fishing guide in Canada before making her way back to her home waters. Bay scallops are the more petite cousins of sea scallops, the common scallops that show up on restaurant menus. But commercial harvest of bay scallops is prohibited in Florida. So one of the easiest ways to taste this very local delicacy is to catch them yourself. Captain Katie Jo knows just where to find them, no matter if you call them scallops or scallops. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Katie Jo.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, this time yesterday, I was just standing in the shower trying to rinse all the scallop smell off of me. We had a big day, though.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Southern Fork listeners, Katie Jo took a group of us out yesterday, and I was able to harvest my first scallops. And then we went to a restaurant and ate them. So I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about scallop culture, because this is a big deal in this area. And you do a lot with fishing charters, but you do a lot of scalloping, right?
Absolutely. Our scallop season typically runs July 1st through September 24th. So it's definitely a summertime water adventurous experience that a lot of people enjoy. A lot of families, even girlfriends, they get together, they do trips with me. And it's basically a underwater Easter egg hunt. That's what everybody calls it. But that's what you're doing. You're floating, swimming, snorkeling on top of the water, looking for these about palm size mollusks in the grass. So.
Yeah. When do you remember the first time you did it? You grew up in Inverness, right?
Yes. So I grew up in Inverness, which is located here in Citrus County. And I would probably say I was about 8 years old, which is the same age as my son now, which is his name is Fish. I remember being out with my parents and putting on the mask, and I didn't use a snorkel. I'm quite like my son right now. I really didn't understand the whole snorkeling part, but I was able to see with the mask on in the crystal clear water and dive down 2 to 3 feet and pick up scallops.
About how many charters do you do a year that really focus on scallops? Because this is a bay scallop. People have already heard that. So it's different than sea scallops, but people make their reservations like a year out, right?
Oh, most definitely. For the most part, right now, when people are stepping off the boat from scalloping, they're already making their reservations to come back and scallop next year.
Because it is that fun, Southern Fork listeners. It's really fun. And by the way, I was really bad at it.
No, you were not.
I was just like very ADHD. I was like, ooh, it's really pretty under here. And there's all this shiny fish. And, oh, wait, what am I doing again?
That is true. It's quite the experience, especially because there's so many other things to see. Starfish is one of the main things that you see. But then there's a ton of other fish. There's remoras swimming around trying to stick to you. There's some burr pufferfish swimming around, different things like that as well. So it's quite the experience.
We definitely saw some rays as well.
Right. We did see stingrays. Mm-hmm. We weren't lucky enough to see any sea turtles on the bottom. However, we did see them swimming on top.
We did see the bubbles, but we were going too fast, so we missed them.
Right.
But yeah. And we did see a manatee yesterday, which is, a very big deal here. Well, actually, it's a pretty common deal in Citrus County, but big deal elsewhere. By the way, they look like a large blob. They look like the blob. Okay, so I've seen manatees. I've actually been in the water with a manatee before, but I went to summer camp as a kid, as a junior high, and we had this thing called the blob, and it was a big pillow that you would jump on, and it would push you off. That's what they look like.
Yeah, something like that, yes. I think they're really cute, though. I love the manatees.
They are very cute. Is there a minimum size that we have to do on the scallops?
So as far as regulations go on the size of the scallops, there is no minimum size. However, we are, as guides, captains in the area, we are promoting what we have as it's called a scallop sorter. And so we are promoting the bigger scallops to keep them and let the smaller scallops, let them go back so that they can grow. They're actually the reproductive part of the scallops as well when they're smaller like that. Once they hit a certain size, they're actually at the end of their life. So those are typically the ones that you want to keep, which, by the way, when we went to plantation yesterday afternoon, the scallop cleaners, the shuckers, said that we had some of the biggest scallops they've seen all season.
Well, I feel like I got the biggest scallop of the season, and that was the first one I was able to see. So I think the universe needed me to see a very large scallop because I just have to tell the story. Katie Jo, you were really awesome. You swam out to meet me, and you were showing me in the water like how to find them, and you found like 2 within, I don't know, 4 minutes at the most. And I put those 2 in my bag. And then when that was a thing, you have to kind of really grab it because they will try to swim away. And
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And they spit when you take them out of the water. So it was a little bit of a thing, but I swam around with those 2 in my bag for a good 2 hours. And I saw no other scallop. I'm sure I swam over hundreds, but.
So I always refer to scalloping, especially people that are new to scalloping, similar to riding a bike as a kid. When you first learn how to ride a bike or you first get on a bike, it's a little difficult. I mean, nobody ever really just jumps on a bike and says, oh, look at me, you have training wheels, you have things like that helps you along the way. And so for me, the best analogy that I could come up with is riding a bike. And the more you scallop, if you come back every year, you come back and you do it a couple days in a row, by the time you leave, you're going to be a pro scalloper. I promise.
Mm-hmm. Is there any scallop that scallop that we should leave that looks sick or anything like that?
No, I don't think that, maybe an empty one that a stone crab's eaten, unless you like shells, but.
Scallops are really part of why the Crystal River region, especially that bay. What is the bay that we were in yesterday?
So we were actually, it's called Ozello is the area. It's right in the middle of Crystal River in Homosassa. It's not necessarily a bay. It's just, we were kind of near what we would call Gomez Rocks, which is a very popular area, very popular set of rocks that are on a lot of the GPSs and navigational aids and stuff like that on the boats. But they gravitate towards that area, because of the salinity of the water. There are actually a lot of springs in that general area. And then the second reason that they gravitate to that area is because of the grass. So, and these are filter feeders. So they really like to hide down in that grass. And honestly, that may have been why you had a little bit of a trouble, because sometimes that grass is 2 to 3 feet high, and those scallops are sitting all the way down at the bottom, just waiting on plankton and whatever else floats by to eat. So
yeah, well, I can use that excuse. That's nice. as other people came back to the boat with 30.
Well, I mean, they were experienced too. So,
well, I'm really grateful. Otherwise, I'd only had an appetizer for lunch, a small appetizer. But I think that that's a good point, that they're filter feeders, just like oysters, which is one of my favorite things to write about and to eat. Oysters really improve the quality of a place, and scallops do as well.
Absolutely, they do. I mean, the water that we were in, you saw, it was absolutely crystal clear, as if we were sitting here looking at each other. You could see the scallops right into that water. So
you could see some of them almost from the boat.
We did. Remember, there was a couple swimming along and things like that as we were idling and that kind of thing. It's
very Finding Nemo to see them swimming. I had a hard time with that. But the way that the geography is, I now understand, because I've done a slight bit of research since we did scalloping yesterday, and understood that it's really like a 1 foot, like the shelf depth goes down 1 foot. So scallops grow in a lot of areas, but they're usually in much deeper water.
Typically, some may be in as shallow as 1 foot of water here. And then a lot of it is tidal as well. So because we have a variance in tidal anywhere from 2 to 4 feet every day, 4 times a day, 2 high tides, 2 low tides, they will move in and out with that tide as well. So I've never been out to 15 feet of water diving for scallops, so I don't know exactly how thick they are out there. I try to stick to the 2 to 6 foot range.
Yeah, we did pretty good. I think we were close to like maybe 6.5, 7 feet yesterday, a little bit.
Yeah, but towards the end of our trip, it was a little bit higher tide.
Yeah. So. Okay. So when we clean them, what do? Just scoop them out like an oyster?
So you definitely do not want to rip them open, because the meat itself is a muscle, and that's what is used to open and close the shell for their protection.
Which is not as slow as the oyster. It's a lot snappier.
They don't really hurt.
No. They don't hurt, but it's more like, ooh, okay.
And you might say a curse word.
True.
But anyway, so the muscle itself is what you eat. That's the scallop. That's the white part of the muscle of the scallop itself. So all around it is the brown digestive parts. I don't recommend eating that, although some people on my boat have tried, and I said, please don't do that in front of me. It's very fishy. It's
it's gritty because it's a mollusk digestive system.
Right. Yeah. So my favorite way to clean them is you take a spoon, because of the natural curvature of the shell and then the curvature of the spoon, and you swipe it across the top of the inside of the shell, and it will detach one part of that side of that muscle. And then you flip the other side and let gravity do its work as you peel the digestive parts off the actual scallop itself.
Great. Now, you've been eating them your whole life. When you were a kid, did you take them home and clean them?
Absolutely. So for me, and I also let a lot of people know, some of the experience, at least your first, second time with scalloping, is cleaning them. It's kind of like a family affair for us. It's a great time. You know, we sit around. Actually, we always turn everything into a competition. So not only how many, who gets the most or who gets the first.
Well, that's because, I mean, that bodes well for you, because you're now a veteran, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you went into that
high performance competition mode.
Right. So then we also kind of join around and we have fun cleaning them. And we, everybody's we make them talk to each other a little bit and make puppets out of them and things like that. But yeah, definitely a good time. But however, if you start to really kind of get quite a few, more than 5 gallons, things like that, then at that point you might find somebody that can do it for $8 a gallon. And you're like, I like this idea better.
Yeah, I like this idea better. And the catch limit per day during the season is?
So here it is 2 gallons per person with a boat maximum of 10 gallons.
Okay. And we caught about a 5 gallon yesterday.
Yes, we caught 5 gallons.
Yeah, which is really cool. And then, I loved them yesterday all different ways. We asked them to be simply prepared, blackened, grilled, and fried. And we're going to talk more about that specifically in the next section. But what is your favorite way to eat them?
So I actually like them on the half shell, similar to an oyster, because I'm a huge oyster fan. And it's almost like a scallop Rockefeller, however you would pronounce that. But yeah, you just put some Parmesan cheese in it, some Old Bay seasoning or some blackening seasoning, a little bit of parsley, dab of butter, and you stick it in the oven. And you don't cook them very long because they're very, they're not.
And you don't want to make them rubbery.
Right.
You really want to be able to taste that sweet, tender scallop meat. And let me tell you, I worked for my dinner yesterday, but it was 100% worth it. So I can't wait to come out with you again, actually. I was like super hooked by the end. I was like, do we have to leave? Yes. I'm on the edge of sunburn. We have to go. We were out for 5 hours, I think.
About 4.5.
Yeah, it was a long day. Well, I have to say thank you for spending some time with me after another long day that you had today, 2 different charters, and we are sitting in your, I don't know, is it correct to say souped up truck? Is that a right way?
I would say it's pretty souped up. You had to climb a little to get in here.
You've got your wrap on the outside, so I'm duly impressed. I could not even back up this thing. So I'm going to get back in my Toyota Corolla, but I am going to do so knowing how to dive for scallops. So thank you for being the one to teach me that this week.
Thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. It was very nice meeting you, and it was a fun time.
Yeah, we had a good time. Until next time.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you've caught the scallops. You've cleaned the scallops. Now what? Well, I'd suggest that you engage in another Florida tradition, calling a restaurant and asking them to cook your catch. Now, this is going to take a little bit of planning and a little bit of coordinating, but it is so worth it. And of course, it's not exclusive to Florida. There are a lot of restaurants in coastal communities that do cook catches from guests, fresh catch from guests, but it's definitely a Florida tradition. And if a restaurant is waterfront or is at a marina or on a dock, chances are they're worth asking if they might cook your catch. Planning might also involve a little bit of sleuthing, a little calling ahead and saying, hey, we're going to be in a few hours. Can we bring our fish? Or in the case of what happened with us, our scallops in. And the places in the Crystal River area of Florida also know how to handle the bay scallops. They're very tender, very small little bites of meat. And so they don't need a lot of cooking. They're very delicate. And our place, Waterfront Social, which is located right in the town of Crystal River, they're just reopening actually after Hurricane Idalia. They had a little bit of cleanup, but they did a wonderful job cooking our scallops. And they cook them 3 ways. They sauteed them just very lightly in oil and a little butter with salt and pepper. Then they blackened them and then they fried them. And I wasn't really excited about a fried scallop because I thought it might be a little over the top for the delicate meat, but actually it was my favorite. They did such a very light breading, and it was obviously very hot oil because they cooked very quickly and they were still really tender. They had a great dipping sauce, but I liked all three. Now, if you do something like a blackened or salt and pepper, that's really easy. And those are really popular for home cooks in the area to really make and put over pasta. And you can also eat like blackened scallops like on a salad. So those are some wonderful ways to really use the scallop. But if you're planning to do this, planning to enjoy recreational fishing while you're on a vacation, remember you can eat your catch. That's part of the fun and definitely a little known restaurant tip if you're just not used to doing that sort of thing. So, Waterfront Social was just one of the places we could have gone. The Crystal River visitor site has around 10 different restaurants for you to explore and see if you might want. But you can Google this in any region that you happen to be visiting, and it might be a fun treat for your family and save, especially if you're in a hotel, you don't have a kitchen, but if you're in an Airbnb, well, you don't have to worry about that cooked fish smell. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll be here again next week with more Southern Fork Summer on the Road.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?